evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Sunday, Yom Rishon. Let's light up the darkness. So, this would normally be a somewhat stressful time because Pesach begins tomorrow night. And we've been feverishly preparing food and turning over the house and getting ready to receive guests. Tonight is the night when we do the B'dikas Chametz, when we search out the last traces of Chametz in our homes so that we can get ready and have, the complete clean sweep of the house. No Chametz found there. Tomorrow morning we'll burn it. There's a fellow in my congregation who's making a siyum on tractate of Avodah Zarah. I really honor him, Daniel. He just read this tractate in all the times when he was waiting for airplanes. He does a lot of traveling, and so when he's waiting for the airplane in the airport, after they tell you to turn off your devices, etc., instead of reading the airline magazine one more time, he was sitting there reading a tractate of Avodah Zarah, and now he just finished it a couple weeks ago, and he just waited to make the siyum tomorrow morning because there's Tainis Bechoros, the fast of the firstborn, right? When we, the firstborn of Israel, were spared while the firstborn in Egypt were killed in the final plague before the redemption. So these are the kinds of things that we would normally have on our minds. Our daughter is a student at Columbia University. Our son is home from yeshiva, but he's been accepted to go to Columbia and is scheduled to start there next year. Today, Columbia University is the number one story on several news outlets. Because it's not just protests. It's not just peaceful protests. I mean, we are really in fear for the safety of Jewish students on that campus. They do not feel safe there. Now, thank God our daughter's home for Pesach, but many students are still there. 5 minutes ago, this is why I titled the show as I did. 5 minutes ago, we were on a Zoom with 500 Jewish parents, students, teachers at Columbia, lawyers who are suing the university, etc., talking about this is a crisis. A fellow who's been in the news quite a bit, a business school professor at Columbia named Shai Davidai, was one of the primary speakers in this Zoom. And his quote is, at Columbia, it's not 1933. It's 1938. So all the people who are talking about lawsuits, multiple lawsuits, threatening pulling funding, losing their status as a recipient of federal funds, etc., to pressure the university to protect the students, these are all very important measures and they will proceed. But those kinds of actions take a long time to bear fruit. And in the meantime, the students are walking around the campus where they're being shouted at, assaulted, made to be afraid, with literal death threats, not kind of ambiguous death threats, not from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which we all know is a veiled death threat. It's not veiled anymore, right? I mean, there was a group of Columbia students with another, one of these protesters holding a sign next to them saying Al-Qassam's next target, right? Saying, come terror organizations, kill these students, kill these Jews. And Columbia, my friends, okay, that's the one in the news right now. That's a flashpoint, but this is going on at every university in America that is not taking the safety of Jews and Jewish students seriously. I'm bringing this to your awareness in case any of you weren't aware, and I doubt any of you were not aware. I'm sure you are aware. But it is not 1933. It's 1938. I mean, we really have to take our safety seriously. We have to be vocal. We have to amplify the voices that are speaking out against this. This Professor Shai Davidai, I definitely recommend you follow him on Instagram. Repost his posts, pay attention to these stories, talk it up in your social media, mention it at your Seder table. When I was growing up, my grandmother lived with us. She survived the Holocaust. Her husband, my grandfather, was murdered in the Holocaust. We're all very aware of the Holocaust throughout my time growing up. My mother was a baby, so she couldn't remember it personally, but she was a survivor of the Holocaust, carried through it as an infant by my grandmother. And, and my grandmother's sister and her two brothers all survived, which was miraculous in itself, but every other member of their family did not. And, they would say, it can happen here. It can happen here. Don't ever think it can't happen here. And I would think, listen, Germany, Hungary, Poland, 1930s, primitive places filled with Jew haters. We understand how a Hitler could come to power and carry out the evil that he did in that context. But in America, freedom loving, God bless America, it couldn't happen here. I'm not saying it is happening, but it no longer seems impossible. So please, my friends, take your safety seriously. Take the safety of your fellow Jews seriously. If you're not Jewish, if you're an ally, take our safety seriously. And as you've heard this kind of saying many times, when they come for the Jews, that's like the canary in the coal mine. Then who's next? I mean, the infiltration, the ideological infiltration of our enemies, who've hijacked the kindness and the goodwill of so many people who fought the civil rights battle throughout the 60s, which was such a beautiful, wonderful triumph, of fighting for civil rights and attaining civil rights for so many in America. And sure, there's more work to do, but that movement has been hijacked, entirely hijacked by people who have infiltrated young minds with the ideas that Jews are evil colonizers and that America is an evil place that should fall. And so, and compared to what? Like they are, their minds have been rotted by our enemies in places like Iran, China, state sponsors of Russia, state sponsors of terrorism. That's the model that we should be following. I apologize that I'm ranting. I'm very emotional right now. But I just feel the need to speak. And I speak with you guys every day, and I just want you to know where I'm coming from. But please, take your safety seriously, take Jewish safety seriously, take American safety seriously, speak out, and don't think that this will just go away by itself, because, my friends, it's not getting better. It's not getting better, and I really fear how much worse it will get before it starts to get better. I apologize for my speech making. Okay. Who's in the house? Stephen in New Hampshire, Joseph in Massachusetts, Sharon, Lila Tov Hag Sameach, Elvis in New York, Bella in Florida, Yehuda in South Carolina, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Joseph in the house, Lucy in Minnesota, Guy in Ohio, Nancy, North Carolina. It really does my heart good to see you all here. Melissa in Great Neck Joe says, Shalom, Sharon. Is he doing the Siyum for the firstborn? Yes, that's exactly what my friend Daniel is doing, which excuses us from fasting tomorrow. They're doing the Siyum or attending it. Sharon, my husband went to Columbia and I went to Penn. Neither of us is donating any longer to either of them. Very important action. Yes. I went to Harvard, and I'll tell you, I sent in a $1 donation this year. And for the first time in all my years as an alum, I got a call from the alumni, from the, not even from the gifts department of Harvard, but the major gifts department. what are they calling me for? I never made that kind of a gift. Major gifts, I would think, is hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. I've only sent hundreds, but this year when I sent $1, because if you send nothing, they don't even notice. When you send $1, they know you're unhappy, and they called me. They had a big meeting with me. I expressed everything that I was feeling about Harvard, and it's bad at Harvard, but at Columbia. Elvis, Google on Professor Jody Dean at Hobart and William Smith Colleges and her recent editorial glorifying the massacre of October 7th. Yeah, I mean, do you know that people are actually saying at these colleges, in these protests, rape is resistance? These words are coming out of American students' mouths at a university? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Sharon, I went to JTS for graduate school and it's across the street from Columbia with many joint programs. I cannot even imagine the stress at that school now. Yeah, just so. Skipped on me. Sharon, my dad used to say, when it happens again, not if. Your non-Jewish friends will turn on you in a minute. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that generation said because they experienced it. I do believe we have allies, many allies in this fight, but we have to rely on ourselves first, and we have to show Hakar Sato. We really have to show gratitude and real love to our allies that are standing with us staunchly. Elvis, of course it can happen here. My shill in Little Geneva, New York has had multiple threats since high holidays last autumn. Yeah. Michael and Gilbert, Yehuda, thank you, Sal. Brandon in Pennsylvania checking in. I wrote them why I didn't donate. Yeah, good, Sharon. Okay, and over there on the YouTube side, I am in Florida. Welcome, everybody. All right, one thing that we certainly can do is keep up our learning. And what Nina is saying all the time, what is the difference between now and when we were all of us, the Jewish family, the Jewish people, under mortal threat in the Purim story, right, in Persia, when there was an actual decree issued by the government that all the Jews in the world would be killed on a single day. So what happened there was that all the Jews in the world cried out, right? They cried out to God. Because let me tell you, it's not confined to modern times that so many Jews are disconnected from Torah, from God, who've turned away. That happened many times, right? So many times Jews went after idolatry because that's what their, peers, their non-Jewish peers were doing. And maybe nothing has united us in the Jewish world like this attack. But please, my friends, cry out. It's so simple. Just say it with your lips. God, please help us. And encourage people who are disconnected to do that. They don't have to start going to shul every day. They don't necessarily have to start wrapping tefillin every day. It would be good. It would be good if they did that. But at least say, even if they don't believe it, even if it's weird to you, even if it's uncomfortable, it won't hurt to say, God, please help us. God, please help us. The more of us cry out to God, the more protected we will be. And the more Torah we learn and the more mitzvahs we do, the more protected we will be. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I'm not saying it's quid pro quo. It happens overnight. It's instant. But yes, I have full emunah, full faith. The more Torah we learn, the more mitzvahs we do, the more protection there will be. Eventually, some kind of a tipping point is reached, and even Mashiach will come. But at least let's get that level up, and we can all do our part to make that happen. All right. Our daf today is Nun Beis, page 52, here in Tractate Bava Metzia, the 22nd volume of the Talmud. We're going to study Mishnah number 4 here in chapter 4. If you're new, if this is your first time here, we're going to go right into some very nuanced, seemingly small laws, but very important laws, like all Jewish laws, because they show that in every aspect of our lives, and even something as mundane as, spending coins at the market, that is a place where we can exercise goodwill, righteousness, justice, compassion. Every realm of our lives is a place where we can fulfill God's will for us, that we treat each other like mensches, like human beings, that we act with righteousness. So let's see what the Mishna says today. How much can the Sela coin be eroded through usage, and its use in a transaction at its original value will still not constitute exploitation? Fascinating question. We don't really deal with this, right? Our system here in America, at least, just kind of automatically takes old coins, or especially old dollar bills, out of circulation, replaces them with new ones. We don't think about this. In the ancient world, it wasn't so organized. So there's coins out there circulating. And in a sense, coins represent the kingdom, right? At the time that the sages are debating this, they're very much either in the Roman Empire, in the land of Israel, or in the Persian Empire, in the Babylonian Jewish community. And these empires could very much be represented by the coins that they issue. And so metaphorically, you might look at this as like, as an empire is eroding, how much does its money erode before that empire is ready to fall? But no, we're talking about something much more specific. As these coins are eroding, at what point do we say that coin is not a coin, or that coin does not have the value of metal weight that we could, with a good heart, right, with good faith, spend that coin and sort of unload that eroded coin on someone else? Now, somebody unloaded it on you, that's how you got it, right? But what are you going to do with that eroded coin? At a certain point, you have to say, this coin is not, it's not worth what it says it's worth, because too much of the metal has worn away. So how much can the Sela coin be eroded through usage, and its use in a transaction at its original value will not constitute exploitation, right? Because at a certain point, you're giving less money than you and the other party are agreeing is the amount of money needed to fulfill the transaction, because the coins have eroded. So Rabbi Meir says the accepted depreciation is 4 isar, which is a rate of 1 isar per dinar, or 1/24th of a dinar. And so 1/24th of the coin is gone, it's no longer usable. And Rabbi Yehuda says the accepted depreciation is 4 pundayon, which is a rate of 1 pundayon per dinar, meaning 1/12th of a dinar, right? So the first opinion is 1/24th is enough to call it not a usable coin. The second opinion, 1/12th. And Rabbi Shimon says, and now we're on page 52a, the accepted depreciation is 8 pundayon, which is a rate of 2 pundayon per dinar, or 1/6. And that brings us back into the more, the notion of when does something constitute exploitation, when, something is being paid at a rate of 1/6 less or more than the market value of the thing being purchased. So the Mishnah continues. Until when is it permitted for one to return a worn coin once he realizes that it is defective? How much time does he have to sort of lodge this claim against the one who gave it to him? In the cities, Bakarakim, one may return it only until a period of time has passed that would allow him to show it to a money changer who is an expert in matters of coins. In the villages where there are no money changers, one may return it only until Erev Shabbos, when people purchase for their Shabbos needs, right? Friday afternoon. So although these are the limits of how much a coin must be eroded in order for there to be exploitation, meaning that you can unwind the deal, if the one who gave the coin to the aggrieved party recognized it, meaning recognized this is the coin that he gave that's now being brought back to him with a claim that this coin is no good, so he must accept it back from him even after 12 months have passed, no matter how little the erosion affected its value. And he has only a grievance against him, as the Gemara will explain. And one may give the slightly eroded coin for use in the desacralizing of second tithe produce, and he did not be concerned, as one who would refuse to accept the slightly eroded coin is merely a miserly soul, while the coin is in fact valid for any use. I mean, coins are always eroding a little. You can't say that just because it's not a brand new coin that the transaction needs to be unwound. All coins erode. The question is, when has it eroded so much? And if you think about this, whether we're talking about a 24th or a 12th, or even, or especially a 6th, I mean, that's quite a bit of erosion. We never see that, right? Even when you see a very old penny, you wouldn't say that that penny has lost 1/24th of its metal, certainly not 1/6. But maybe our modern coins are manufactured in a more durable manner than these ancient coins were. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara. And the Gemara raises a contradiction to the Mishnah from a Baraisa in which the same measures of depreciation are enumerated. As in that Baraisa, those measures are introduced with a question. How much must the seller coin be eroded so that its use in a transaction at its original value will constitute exploitation? And this is diametrically opposed to the Mishnah. Right? The Mishnah started, how much can the seller coin be eroded through usage, and its use in a transaction, its original value will not constitute exploitation. And the Baraisa is worded, how much must the seller coin be eroded so that its use in a transaction, its original value will constitute exploitation. Right? That's the opposite way of it, the opposite wording. How much must it be eroded before we don't use it, or how much must it be eroded until how much so we can still use it, right? So Rav Papa says, La Kasha, this is not difficult. The Tana of our Mishnah calculates the measures from low to high. The Tana says that it does not constitute exploitation up to, but not including, the levels of depreciation enumerated in the Mishnah, 1/24th, 1/12th, and 1/6. And the external Tana, meaning the Tana, the rabbi of our Baraisa, calculates from high to low. So the Tana says that it is exploitation down to and including the levels of depreciation enumerated in the Baraisa. And it is only beneath those levels that it is not considered exploitation. So there is no halakhic dispute between the two Tanaim. It's just different grammar to get at the same meaning. Now the Gemara returns to discuss the Mishnah and asks, what is different with regard to a sela that the Tanaim disagree about the level of depreciation that constitutes exploitation? And what is different with regard to a garment that the Tanaim do not disagree concerning whether the disparity between value and price that constitutes exploitation is 1/6 or less than 1/6? Right? We said that when you're buying and selling other stuff, the price is 1/6 or above or below the market value. Or you could say you're buying a certain amount of cloth, right? And then if he delivers, more than 1/6 above or below what is promised, maybe that's when it kicks in. But everyone agrees that it's a 1/6, right? So in transactional matters, it's always about a 1/6. But when we're talking about erosion of the coins themselves, why are we saying we're still talking about exploitation? But we don't say it's a 6. That's only one of the views, and the two other views are a 24th or a 12th. So what's different about coins versus merchandise? Rava said, who is the Tana that taught the laws of exploitation with regard to a garment in the Mishnah cited earlier in our chapter? It is Rabbi Shimon, who maintains that even in the case of a sela, the measure of exploitation is 1/6. Abaye said that the two cases are different. With regard to a garment, a person is likely to waive the disparity up to 1/6. As people say, overpay and acquire an item for your back. Right? He's still talking about the price, not the amount of material given. But he's saying why is it 1/6? Because a person is willing to pay, even overpay a 1/6 of the market value, as long as he can get a garment when he needs a garment, right? He needs that garment, so he's willing to overpay a little bit so he can have it now. And acquire at cost items for your stomach, i.e. food. Since it is worth purchasing fine garments, the disparity is not significant. By contrast, with regard to the seller in question, since it does not circulate, he does not waive even the sum of a smaller disparity. So that's interesting. What I'm hearing here is that the seller is a very valuable coin that's more like owning Krugerrands, right? It's it's not that you're spending sellers every day. You don't go to the market to buy typical kinds of purchases with a seller. You'd use smaller coins. Now, so when you do buy a seller, you want it, accurate, right? That's what makes sense. So with regard to the matter of exploitation in coins itself, the Gemara elaborates, how much will the seller coin be eroded and its use in transaction will constitute exploitation? So here was the three opinions. Rabbi Meir says 4 Issar, which is a rate of an Issar per dinar. Rabbi Yehuda says 4 pundayon, which is a pundayon per dinar. And Rabbi Shimon says 8 pundayon or 2 pundayon per dinar. If the depreciation is greater than that, he may sell the coin at its value as metal, not for its original minted value. So to what extent can the coin erode, and it will still be permitted for one to maintain it as a coin as opposed to metal weight? With regard to a sela, it can be used as a sela until it erodes so that its value reaches 1 shekel, i.e. half a sela. With regard to a dinar, it can be used as a dinar until it erodes so that its value reaches 1/4. Once it erodes to the point where its value reaches an issar less than that, it is prohibited to spend it. He may not sell the invalidated coin to a merchant, nor to a violent man, nor to a murderer, because they deceive others with it or force them to take it. Rather, he should perforate it and suspend it as an ornament on the neck of his son or the neck of his daughter. Now, this is righteousness indeed, right? I mean, imagine that you end up with this coin, its value has eroded, and now you're facing this choice. Shall I take it out of circulation, which means I have a loss, right? Whatever I own that coin, I had money worth that amount, but now I see that it's eroded, it isn't really worth that amount. So I can either find the next sucker in line and unload it on him, and then he can face this choice and it's not my problem, or I can do the right thing and pull it out of circulation so that I don't rip anyone off and nobody else gets ripped off down the line. That is righteousness indeed. Now, to what extent can the coin erode and it will still be permitted for one to maintain it as a coin? Oh, no, I just said that. So the Gemara continues its analysis of the Brisa. The master said, with regard to a sela, it can be used as a sela until it erodes so that its value reaches 1 shekel, i.e. a half sela. With regard to a dinar, with regard to a dinar, it can be used as a dinar until it erodes so that its value reaches 1/4. And the Gemara asks, what is different whereby, with regard to a sela, it can be used as a sela until it erodes so that its value reaches 1 shekel, which is half a sela? And what is different with regard to a dinar, where it can be used as a dinar until it erodes so that its value reaches 1/4? You can eroding quite a bit there. And 1/4, the word for that is rova. Anybody recognize the word rova who's been to Jerusalem? And if you go visit the old city, you'll encounter that the old city is divided into 4 quarters, right? So there's the Arab quarter, the Jewish quarter, I think the Armenian quarter, which is the Christian quarter, and what is the other quarter? There's 4. Somebody will remind me. But, you know, the word for that quarter is rova. And when you just say the rova without any other adjective, what you mean is the Jewish quarter. And there's the famous synagogue that was rebuilt in modern times after it was destroyed in the war. It's actually called the Churva, but everyone calls it the Rova because it's the big synagogue there in that open plaza in the Rova. And when you walk through that square, when you walk past some yeshivas, like my son's yeshiva, and eventually you make your way down to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. But the word Rova means quarter, right? And here we're talking about it, a quarter coin is referred to as a rova. So Abaye says, what is the meaning of rova that the Baraisa teaches? It too is referring to a coin called rova, which is worth 1/4 of a shekel, which is half a dinar. So Rava said the language of the Baraisa is also precise in this regard, as the Tana teaches rova and does not teach 1/4, which would be revia. So the Gemara concludes, learn from that inference that the reference of the Tana of the Baraisa is to the coin called rova, which is half a dinar. So in other words, when a coin erodes, like it's lost half its metal, beyond that you can't keep using it, even if it's recognizable as that coin. And the Gemara asks, why? But didn't we start by saying 1/6 is the most of these measures? But that was with a sela. So the Gemara asks, why does the Tana state his ruling so that the amount of erosion that disqualifies a dinar is dependent on a shekel? Why does the Tana state the measure of 1/4 of a shekel rather than stating it as 1/2 of a dinar? And the Gemara explains, by doing so, the Tana teaches us a matter in passing, that there are cases where a dinar originates from a shekel, for example, a shekel that eroded and is now worth one half its original value, i.e. a dinar. And this supports, and that's why you'll accept that these lower value coins can erode and either use them at their minted value or start using them at their lower metal value, but they'll still circulate. Whereas the sela, which is a bigger, more valuable coin, you really only want a sela that is for sure worth what it says it's worth, and that's why you would only accept as little as 1/24th erosion. Now, this supports the opinion of Rabbi Ami, as Rabbi Ami says, with regard to a dinar that originated from a shekel, it is permitted to maintain it and use it as a dinar. Based on its size and shape, there is no concern that people will confuse it with a shekel. With regard to a dinar that originated from a sela, it is prohibited to maintain it and use it as a dinar, due to the fact that even after erosion, the coin remains the size of a sela, which is clearly larger than a dinar. The concern is that people will mistakenly consider it more valuable than a dinar. Now, the Gemara continues its analysis of the Baraisa, which teaches that once it erodes to the point where its value reaches an isser less than that, it is prohibited to spend it. And the Gemara asks, what is the Tana saying in that statement? Abaye said that this is what the Tana is saying. If a sela eroded by the amount of an isar, greater than the measure of exploitation, it is prohibited to spend it at its original value. So Rava said to Abaye, if so, then even any amount greater than the measure of exploitation should be forbidden as well. Rather, Rava said that this is what the Tana is saying. If a sela eroded by the amount of an isar per dinar, it is prohibited to spend it. And this unattributed baraisa is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who says that in the Mishna that the measure of exploitation is 1 isar per dinar. So we learned in the Mishnah there, Tractate Kalim, a sela that was invalidated for use as a coin, and an individual designated it so that he would weigh with it items that require weighing, is susceptible to becoming ritually impure. His designation rendered it a vessel like any other weight. So to what extent can the coin erode and it will still be permitted to maintain it? For a sela, it is an erosion of 2 dinars, half its value. If it eroded to an extent that it was worth less than that, he must cut it into pieces to prevent its being confused with a proper coin, right? Now you become a protector of the public when you've identified a coin that can cause confusion. It's on you to take it out of circulation, even though that means you will lose its value from your pocket. And the Gemara asks, if it eroded, but its current value is greater than 1 shekel, then what is the law? And Rav Huna said, if it eroded and depreciated less than 1 shekel, he must cut it into pieces. And if it eroded and depreciated more than that, he must also cut it into pieces. And Rabbi Ami says, if it eroded and depreciated less than 1 shekel, he must cut it into pieces. And if it eroded and depreciated more than that, he may maintain it, because there is no concern that one will confuse a coin that eroded to that extent with a sela. Right? So it's like once you go far enough, then it's not going to be confused with that kind of coin anymore, and people will only use it as a weight. The Gemara raises an objection from the Baraisa, and now we're on page 52b. If the erosion was greater than that, he may sell the coin at its value as metal, not for its original value. And what, is it not that it eroded more than its measure of exploitation? And the Gemara rejects this claim. No, the term greater means that if it did not yet erode to its measure of exploitation, he may sell it at its value. Another objection was raised. To what extent can the coin erode and one would still be permitted to maintain it? For a sela that deteriorated, it is permitted to maintain it up to a shekel, which is half its value. Does this not mean that the sela depreciated little by little, which indicates that even though it lost half its value, which is greater than the measure of exploitation, it is still permitted for one to maintain it, and there is no concern about deceit? And the Gemara rejects this. No, it is referring to a coin that fell into the fire and eroded all at once, and therefore no deceit is possible, because no one will be confused that that could be worth its minted value. The master said in the Baraisa, if a coin greatly depreciated, he should perforate it and suspend it as an ornament on the neck of his son or the neck of his daughter. And the Gemara raises a contradiction from a Baraisa. With regard to an eroded coin, one should not make it a weight among his weights, nor cast it among his metal scraps, nor perforate it and suspend it on the neck of his son or the neck of his daughter. lest he come to use it by mistake. Distance yourself from sin, my son. Rather, he should either grind it or melt it or cut it into pieces or take it and cast it into the Dead Sea. Distance yourself and protect everyone from coming to stray into using false weights and measures by leaving that coin in circulation. Rabbi Elazar said, and some say Rav Huna said that Rabbi Elazar said, this is not difficult. Here, where it is permitted to fashion the coin into an ornament, it is in a case where he perforated the coin in the middle and therefore can no longer be mistaken for a valid coin. There, where it is prohibited to fashion the coin into an ornament, it is in a case where he perforated the coin from the side. In that case, the concern is that he might cut the edge of the coin and use the unperforated remainder to deceive others. Now, the Mishnah teaches, until when is it permitted for one to return a depreciated coin? Okay, now we've just defined what a coin that is beyond usability is. And now we're saying, okay, well, if you find such a coin that you received in a transaction, until when? What is the time limit for lodging a claim against the buyer who gave it to you? So the Mishnah teaches, until when is it permitted for one to return a depreciated coin? In the cities, one may return it only until a period of time has passed that would allow him to show it to a money changer who is an expert in matters of coins. In the villages where there is no money changer, one may return it only until Erev Shabbos, when the people purchase their Shabbos needs. And the Gemara asks, what is different with regard to a sela, whereby the Tana distinguishes between the cities and villages, and what is different with regard to a garment, whereby he does not distinguish between cities and villages? Right? When we said before that exploitation, when you're purchasing a garment or any other merchandise, if there was exploitation, how much time do you have to find out, right? You can go to someone who is an expert in that kind of merchandise or a relative who will tell you what the market value is. But they didn't make a distinction between cities and, small towns. So Abaye said, well, when we learn the halacha in the Mishnah with regard to a garment as well, it is with regard to its sale in the cities that we learned it. Concerning the sale of a garment in a village, he can return it even at a later stage, right? Because there's fewer people who are expert in the market value of that kind of merchandise. Rava said there is a difference between a garment, as the example of merchandise, and a coin. In the case of a garment, every person is certain with regard to its value, and presumably the buyer will be informed of his mistake immediately. In the case of a sela, coin, since not every person is certain with regard to its value, and rather it is only a money changer who is certain, therefore in the cities where there are money changers available, the buyer can return the coin until a period of time has passed that would allow him to show it to a money changer. But in the villages where there are no money changers, he has until Erev Shabbos, when people go to the market, at which point he will discover the actual value of that sela coin. And the Mishnah teaches, and although these are the limits of how much a coin must be eroded in order for there to be exploitation, legally speaking, if the one who gave the coin to the aggrieved party recognized it as the coin that he gave to the aggrieved party, so then he must accept it back from him even after 12 months have passed, no matter how little the erosion affected its value, and he has only a grievance against him. And the Gemara asks, where did this occur? If it was in the cities, didn't you say that he has only until a period of time has passed that would allow him to show it to a money changer? And if it was the villages, didn't you say that he has only until Erev Shabbos? So Rav Chisda said the sages taught an attribute of piety here, according to which he must accept it even after considerable time has passed, right? That time limit of as long as it takes to show a money changer or until Erev Shabbos in the villages, that's if the seller, that's if the buyer is not going to recognize that that's the specific coin that he gave. But if the seller, right, the one who received the money, can say to the buyer, look, you and I met on such and such a date in such and such a place, and this is the coin that you gave me, and you know it's the coin that you gave me because it has this marking that we mentioned in conversation when you gave it to me. So you know this is the coin that you gave me. So then those time limits don't apply. And so this is the attribute of piety. So the sages taught an attribute of piety here, according to which he must accept it even at a considerable time. And so the Gemara asks, if so, say the latter clause of the Mishnah, and he has only a grievance against him. Well, for whom is there a grievance? If it is for the pious person who accepted the return of the flawed coin, although he was not required to accept it, and is teaching that he may have a grievance against the one who requested of him to accept the coin, well then let him not accept the coin from him and let him not have a grievance. So rather, perhaps, that clause is referring to that person from whom he accepted the coin. But after the person piously accepts return of the coin from him, is it reasonable that the one who returned the coin will have a grievance? Right? He brought the coin back and the guy took it back as a pious act. What grievance is left? And the Gemara answers that this is what the Tana is saying. But with regard to another person who is not pious and does not accept to take the coin back, although he does not accept return of the coin from him after the time has passed, the one who requested that he accept it has only a grievance against him. One cannot compel the person from whom he received the coin to accept it in return, as, although the coin maintains its value, not everyone is willing to conduct business with a coin whose value is questionable. The Mishnah teaches, and one may give the slightly eroded coin, we're back to our Mishnah number 4 here in chapter 4, the later clause of it, and one may give the slightly eroded coin for use in the desacralizing of second tithe produce, right? So when the temple was standing and people harvested their produce, first 2% is a tithe given to the Kohanim, the priest. Next 10% is a tithe given to the Leviim who did not receive a portion of land when the land was distributed to the tribes of Israel. And then the next 10% after that is the second tithe, which the person keeps for himself and funds his eating and drinking when he goes on a pilgrimage up to Jerusalem, like for Passover. So we would be right now at this time in the calendar, if we were making the pilgrimage, headed up to Jerusalem, carrying our second tithe. Now, either we'd be carrying the produce itself in bags, very unwieldy, or the Torah specifically wrote that we can desacralize that produce, right? We can trade it for money, and then we take that money as our second tithe money to spend in Jerusalem for food and drink while we're there. We bind that money in our hand. So when we, and then once you do that, right, once you transfer the sanctity of the second tithe produce to this second tithe money, the produce is no longer consecrated. Anyone can eat it, right? It does not have that sanctity of second tithe because you transferred its sanctity to the money that you're carrying up to Jerusalem. So that's why we call it desacralizing. So now when you desacralize that second tithe produce onto the money, we're asking, well, if that money is slightly eroded, did you properly desacralize the second tithe produce, right? And one may give the slightly eroded coin for use in the desacralizing of second tithe produce, and he need not be concerned, as one who would refuse to accept a slightly eroded coin is merely a miserly soul, while the coin is in fact valid for any use. So Rav Papa said, conclude from this formulation of the Mishnah, that this one who insists upon the integrity of his coins and accepts only unflawed coins is characterized as a miserly soul. And the Gemara adds, and this matter applies only if the flawed coins that he rejected still circulate. But one who refuses to accept coins that are not in circulation and will be very difficult to spend them, that's not a miserly soul, that's a prudent person. The Gemara comments, and this supports the opinion of Chizkiah, as Chizkiah says, if one comes to change this flawed silver coin for copper coins, he changes it for its value, deducting several perutos due to erosion. If he comes to desacralize second tithe with it, he desacralizes the produce with it as though its value were that of an unflawed coin. And in other words, you always err to the side of making sure that no sanctity is lost. We're almost done for today, so if you've got questions or comments, please get them in now. The Gemara asks, what is Chizkiah saying? is he merely repeating the halacha cited in the Mishnah? And the Gemara explains that this is what he is saying. Although when he comes to change into perutos, this flawed silver coin upon which he redeemed his second tithe produce, he changes it for its actual, not its original value. When he desacralizes second tithe with it, he desacralizes the produce with it as though it were an unflawed coin. And the Gemara asks, is that to say that Chizkiah holds that we treat second tithe with contempt, i.e. that we redeem it for less than its actual value? But doesn't Chizkiah say in the case of second tithe produce that does not have the value of even one peruta and therefore cannot be redeemed? One says the second tithe produce and its 1/5 that is added when one redeems his own second tithe produce, lest you shortchange yourself. When you sell it to a stranger, you get a fair price. When you sell it to yourself, you might be tempted, to spend less of your money and call that second tithe, which can only be spent in Jerusalem. So the Torah mandates that you add 1/5 when you desacralize your own produce rather than selling it to a third party. So the second tithe produce and its 1/5 that is added when one redeems his own second tithe produce are desacralized upon the first coins, upon which I already redeemed second tithe produce worth at least one peruta, because it is impossible for a person to be precise with his coins. Do we say this? Presumably the value of the coins with which he redeemed the produce somewhat exceeded the value of the produce. Therefore, he can desacralize additional produce worth less than one peruta with those coins. So apparently, Chizkiah holds that one may not display contempt for second tithe produce by redeeming it on coins worth less than its value. And the Gemara explains, what is the meaning of beyafa? It means that although the coin had eroded, it is accorded unflawed status, and one may desacralize second tithe produce with it. Nevertheless, it is assessed according to its actual, not its original value, as we do not treat second tithe produce with two forms of contempt. One may use an eroded coin, but only according to its actual value, not its original value, which it's not worth that anymore. Okay, that's what I've got for us today. Today is Sunday, so I published the holiday schedule. We'll have class not again until Thursday, right? So tomorrow it's just not possible to have a class on Erev Pesach. So no class Monday, no class Tuesday, and Wednesday, which are the first 2 days, right? Which are full-fledged holidays, the first 2 days of Passover. And then we will resume on Thursday at the regular time. It'll be Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of the festival. And as I published, we'll have class at regular time, 6 p.m. on Thursday, regular Friday time, noon. Next Shabbos, regular Shabbos time, a little over an hour after Shabbos ends. After Shabbos ends in LA. I think we got on about 9:25 yesterday, maybe 9:30 next week. Then on that Sunday, right, a week from today, that'll be sort of Erev 7th night of Pesach. So we'll have a class special Sunday time of noon on that day. Then we'll have no class on Monday, Tuesday, and then the Wednesday after the whole Passover festival ends, we'll get back to our regular schedule, right? So no class after today until Thursday at 6 p.m., and you'll find the whole holiday schedule on the Facebook page, and it went out in our email. If you're not on our weekly email bulletin, you should be. It's accidentaltalmudist.org/newsletter, and you could just go to accidentaltalmudist.org and follow the link to sign up, and you'll get that, and things like all the week's classes and Nina's hero stories and the Torah portion commentaries and holiday information and beautiful Torah commentaries that Nina writes every week, plus all of our classes. Everything is in that weekly email. You should definitely be on that weekly email at accidentaltalmudist.org/newsletter. Okay, questions? Not on YouTube side. Nina is very busy working, getting the house ready. So I am scanning the questions. Let me do my best here. Okay, Sharon. Haley Felsher Chambers. Wow. Hi, Haley, my good friend from high school. says at Northwestern, the dean of students went to a rally that targeted Hillel. Guess she's not the dean of Jewish students. I was planning to skip my donation this year, but I like your $1 idea. I'll give Hillel the difference. Great job, Haley. I mentioned earlier that if you donate to your alma mater, instead of not donating, send them $1 because that gets their attention, how unhappy you are, and then they'll want to know why, and you can tell them they're doing a terrible job protecting Jewish students. People talking with each other. Good. Bill, so although the Armenian quarter is a quarter of the majority Christian Armenians, the Christian quarter, that's it. There's the Armenian quarter and the Christian quarter. Thank you for reminding me. In Jerusalem, as it were, is the one you were forgetting. Explaining why the Armenians have a separate quarter would require a lecture on Christian history that is fascinating, but beyond the scope of this conversation. Right. So the point was in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem, you have 4 quarters. It's the Armenian quarter, the Christian quarter, the Arab quarter, or the Muslim quarter, same thing, and the Jewish quarter, and each is called a rova. And when you say, in Hebrew, and when Jews are talking, when they say rova without an adjective, they mean the Jewish quarter. And as we saw, rova is also used to mean a quarter of a coin. Elvis, today's teaching seems to me to align so well with the Torah portions we have been reading in Leviticus, where an overarching meta-narrative, at least for me, has been the emphasis on mindfulness, attention to detail, order, and justice. Just so, right? When we're talking about last week Tazria, this past week the Metzora, and now we're into Acharei. But where we're talking about, that the one who judged others unfavorably and spoke it out loud, right? Generally, we attribute that when Saras existed, that physical expression of a spiritual malady, was generally linked to Lashon Hara, evil speech, talking about others in an unsavory way. And sometimes the Chafetz Chaim would say, even when you're talking about others, to say nice things about them, not in their presence. That's Lashon Hara because it leads to a conversation that will include negative things. But at any rate, one who engaged in sufficient Lashon Hara, he would have these eruptions on his skin, and then he would have to go through that multi-stage purification process. But as my friend Rabbi Meni Chazanov spoke yesterday in our show, it's so interesting that at each stage, it talks about his purification, right? And so the end of Torah portion Tazria was this is the Torah of the eruption, right? This is the Torah of the nega. This is the Torah of the afflictions in the skin. And then when we get into Torah portion Mitzora, when we talk about this is the Torah of the Mitzora, of the person, who is the one who is afflicted, what we're always talking about is where he's going, right? He is purifying himself. And it's a multi-stage process, and you have to be very meticulous about doing it. But it's a gift, right? That sort of, it's a gift that God gives us. And it's a great kind of lesson to remember when we're going through life's hardships, that it seems so awful while we're in it. And maybe this is something for me to remember right now as, Jews are under attack and I'm so stressed out on behalf of our people, especially my children, that, okay, something good can come of this. Something good will come of this. Something good has come out of every horror in our history. One, somewhat more revealed good is how united we are at this time. But at any rate, on a personal level, when we're going through hardship, just ask, what good can I make out of this, right? It's not so, Rabbi Avigdor Miller would talk about, you got to have both, right? Full emunah, so full faith that God is in charge and God will determine the outcome of everything, and full hishtadlus, meaning you do your part to the utmost, you do your work, you take on, every bit of risk reduction, harm reduction, doing the hard work, putting yourself in the right place. Everything that is in our power to do, you got to do it. But then, having done all that, we let go of the outcome and say the outcome is in God's hands, and as God decrees, I accept. Joe, when a coin was minted, wasn't the value of the coin based on the value of the metal that was used in creating it? I think much, much more that was true then than it is now. Exactly. And that's why they were saying that if the coin, its minted value is based on its weight, and some of it has eroded, then how can you say that that coin is worth what it says it's worth if what it says it's worth is based on its weight and some of that coin has eroded? It's exactly the right question, and that's why it's so relevant. Whereas today, none of our coins are worth what they say they are, right? There's much less precious metal in our coins, and we accept them on their minted value because they've sort of gone off that standard of being worth what we say they're worth. So there you go. But Amy says, I read in the Wall Street Journal that a nickel cost 11 cents to mint. So maybe I'm wrong about that. Although maybe it's not so much. The metal in the nickel is also the labor, etc. Plus inflation, the jobs, and everything that's going on, and what it costs the government. But I'm not sure. I need to learn more about that. And Joe says pennies cost far more to mint than they're worth. That's why from time to time there's a discussion about stopping the production of pennies. There you go. Right? Pennies, I guess, are copper. Copper has that value, and there's the just expense of minting them at a time when pennies are worth so little. I mean, think how lucky we are in the United States that even when we experience inflation and complain about it, it's nothing like, what relatives of mine have experienced in places like Argentina, in many countries around the world with hyperinflation, where, whatever denomination you're used to today, 6 months from now, it doesn't exist. They've had to make whole new denominations worth 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 times more because of that inflation. So the fact that pennies are still here, it's somewhat of a testament, God willing, to the stability of America. That's what I've got for us today. I'm wishing you a safe, kosher, joyful Chag Pesach. May we only hear good news. Please, God, may we only hear good news. May we be refreshed and uplifted with this holiday. May we hear news of the liberation of the hostages. Common practice that people are having is to leave an empty place at their Seder table, honoring the hostages. Can't imagine what they're suffering. Please, God, may they come out of that situation as soon as possible. And may this war end with a secure and lasting peace for Eretz Yisrael and Am Yisrael. We say Amen, all the best, and I look forward to seeing you again, my holy sisters and brothers, on Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific. All the best.